Welcome everyone to the channel. My name is Jake and I'm so glad you were able to join me. Now, today we're going to be talking about what I call the momentum mindset, which is all about how you take like the tiny wins and you can create them and stack them against each other in order to get really big breakthroughs in life, especially if you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed or stressed, as a parent, an entrepreneur, as the employee who's just, cranking away on things. Like, this is for you and how you can really start to create momentum in your life. Like, let me ask you a couple questions, maybe ask you a few things, and I want you to be honest with yourself for a second. Have you ever felt like you're just showing up and like you're doing the work, you're staying consistent, and you're still wondering like, why does it feel like nothing's really changing? Maybe you are a parent who's trying to be more patient or more present or more grounded with your kids. And even though you've been trying, you still have those moments where maybe you snap and it's like, man, am I even getting better at this? Am I doing anything about it? Or maybe you are that entrepreneur and you're putting, let's say you're putting out content. I know all about that. That's what I'm doing right now. You show up for your people, you're refining your offers, and you're like, man, I'm doing all the right things they tell me I should do, but my business still feels like it's stuck in second gear. Like you're planting seeds, but they're never sprouting, right? Or maybe you're in a 9-to-5 job, steadily growing your skill set, contributing more, helping others win. But when opportunities show up, somehow you keep getting passed over. And it's hard to ask, like, does this even matter? Do people even care about the work that I'm doing? Now, if that is you, then today's video is for you, I promise you, because today we're going to be talking about this idea of this momentum mindset. And this isn't some sort of a hypey productivity trick by any means. This is all about rewriting how you see progress. And it's about learning to trust the kind of growth that doesn't shout out right away, that doesn't look like big leaps, but it stacks quietly in the background until one day everything really does start to click for you. Now, if you're wondering, my name is Jake Talbert. I'm the founder. I'm the author of this book. It's called The GIVER Method. It is an Amazon bestseller. It came out in November. It's been a bestseller ever since. It has tons of 5-star reviews. Thousands of people have purchased it, and they've already seen amazing results. Everything we talk about is going to be grounded in principles from The GIVER Method and from upcoming books that we have. Now, I highly recommend that you go get yourself a copy of it, that you take the few minutes and go spend $10 and get yourself a copy of it. It's the best $10 you could do, especially before prices go up. The people who get it, they are learning to discover gifts and superpowers more, to create more influence and impact in their lives, to create more value for those around them, improve relationships, live more impactful life, fulfilled life, with more joy and everything along those lines. So I highly recommend you get it. It will have a massive impact on your life. Now, what I've learned through my own story, and by walking others, parents and entrepreneurs, professionals who are like you through this sort of thing, what I've learned is that most people are trained to chase these breakthroughs and ignore the real wins. We think success shows up with the big moves, the bold leaps, but the truth is it almost never does. That real momentum we're looking for, the kind that changes who you are and how you move through the world and how you can be more authentic, it gets built one very small, meaningful action at a time. So if you're feeling stuck, in that frustrating space where effort just doesn't seem to equal progress in any sort of means for you, or you're wondering if your daily actions actually are getting you anywhere, then we want to lean into this, because that's what we're going to be talking about. That's how we shift everything for you. Now, before we dive in, if you do find this valuable, please like the video, of course. Hit subscribe if you're new here. Ring that bell for notifications. I wouldn't want you to miss out on any of the videos I put out that help people to discover gifts, superpowers, make these changes, live more authentically. Put out videos all week long, and so would love for you to be able to get access to those. If you want to connect with me more, you can go down below. I'll have the links of where you can find us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, or at thegivermethod.com. And if you're like, hey, the message is what you're saying, it resonates really well. I've got this platform, I've got a stage, I've got a podcast or a community who needs to hear this, then, once again, down in the description, I'll put a link where you can go book a time with me. We could talk about what that could look like, because I enjoy bringing the value to people. The spoiler alert to this, everybody, is when you buy a book, I don't make anything off of a book. If I present and create more value for people in your community, in your tribe, I don't make money off those sort of things. To me, I love knowing that you are moving forward and starting to make the progress towards who it is that you're meant to be, so that the universe can pay you back as a part of that. So let's talk about this. Let's dive into it. How you can build the kind of momentum that you don't have to chase, because it, once it starts, it actually carries you forward. And so you get to lean into it. So as I cover these principles, there's going to be a lot of details about them and action items. So I recommend that you take notes along the way. It's always a benefit to you. So the first principle, the first thing is about this, compound vision strategy, which is You need to see the steps that build the breakthrough, okay? As we kick this thing off, it's probably something that's been quietly working against you for some time. You're not seeing how the small actions actually connect to the big picture of what it is that you're dreaming of, what you're trying to achieve. Like when you show up with patience with your kid today, but it doesn't feel like you're building any sort of emotional connection, with your family, the connection that you want, right? Maybe you send 3 outreach emails as in your business, and feels like it's maybe a drop in the ocean compared to the success that you're trying to chase. You give this solid, input at work, and it really feels like nobody actually noticed. Like, it's easy to think like, is any of this even doing anything? And so that's where this sort of shift comes in, where we start to actually acknowledge the thing. I call it you're seeing the steps that you build, that are going to build the breakthrough for you. It's about retraining your brain. Maybe I need to retrain my brain to recognize that today's small wins, they're not random. They're actually part of a larger and more purposeful pattern that is stacking towards something that's really real. So what you want to do to make this work for you is start with your big picture. You got to look at that big picture vision. Maybe it's a deeper connection with your kids you're trying to get, or a thriving, values aligned business, or finally feeling like your career reflects your potential. Whatever it is, you want to trace it backwards and ask what small or repeatable actions actually support this sort of an outcome. Not big, dramatic moves. I'm not expecting people to burn everything down and start from scratch. And as a parent, an entrepreneur, someone who's working away hard in their job, you don't have tons of extra time to go do things. And so everything we'll talk about this and throughout this video is designed to be stuff that you can carry. So look at the small stuff, the stuff that, that's easy to skip because it doesn't feel big enough to matter. Now, what you want to do is create, look at a momentum ladder, and maybe it's a visual where you draw it out, draw out what you want, that maps how the small actions are going to lead towards maybe the next thing and the next thing. For example, that, taking 5 minutes of no phone conversations or whatever, we're going to put phones away while I'm talking with the kids, and I'm going to have that be where it leads towards trust, which leads towards them opening up more, which leads towards hopefully dinner conversations more real, which builds emotional bonds that you've been craving. Suddenly a 5-minute moment doesn't feel so small when you see how it stacks up, right? Now, this principle, this idea is so important because, when we don't see how today's efforts tie to tomorrow's breakthroughs, we either quit too early or we burn ourselves out trying to, find the big results fast. You may already be in that place of burnout, and, using these sort of steps are going to help you to build yourself out of it. Once you see the connection, and once you realize every meaningful change is being built brick by brick, and it might be really small bricks, habit by habit, you stop chasing the overnight successes that don't exist, and you start building something that lasts forever and that you can continue to lean back on. Which takes us to the second principle, which is this identity-driven momentum, a trigger that you have. So think of it, this identity trigger, it's show up you are who you're becoming. Something that we want to talk about, that there's this weird resistance that shows up right before you're about to do something meaningful. You may have felt that moment before where you're about to ask, maybe your spouse a deeper question. You're up in that business doc. You're about to send a message that you've been avoiding, and suddenly, suddenly you're just wiping yourself out in that moment. Or you're finding yourself doing a task that you do all the time, cleaning the same part of the kitchen again for the 5th time. You're diving deep into the emails that weren't urgent an hour ago, but you're finding yourself just, doing these meaningless tasks because you're avoiding it. It's not laziness, it's your brain doing what it's wired to do, which is avoid any sort of discomfort or uncertainty or anything that feels like it's a threat to your self-concept and who you are. And the truth is, it doesn't matter how many productivity hacks you try. If you don't shift how you see yourself in these moments, the resistance is going to win every single time. And I did a video last week on resistance, and amazing how people started to open their eyes and see what that could do for them. So this is where this identity trigger comes in. It's a combination of 2 things that work together, and it's like magic, and it's grounded in how your brain is actually wired. First, make the action so small that it's nearly impossible to resist. Just super simple. Second, try it directly to who you're becoming. How do I tie this back to who I'm becoming, who I want to be, not who I've been? And so what you want to do is you start by picking one area where you want to get some momentum back. It could be parenting or your business, your health, your confidence at work, whatever. And then shrink it down until like it's so small that like you can't even argue with it, right? And then ask yourself, like, you want to ask your child one question. You want to write one sentence to a client. You want to speak one insight out loud before a meeting, like whatever, it's just one. Like there's no pressure to go any further. And then here's where the shift will happen. Create the identity statement that you need that backs the action. So I know what action I want to take. I'm going to make it super small. And I'm going to tell myself something like, hey, I'm the kind of parent that shows up even when things are messy. Or I'm the business owner who builds momentum one relationship at a time. Or I'm someone who keeps promises to myself, even if they're small. And like before you do the action, you just say to yourself, you say this sort of thing to yourself again and again. And after you say, see, that's me showing up again. That's me proving to myself that I'm on the right path. And then to make it stick, like maybe you need visual cues. Maybe you need that sticky note, in the car or by the coffee maker. Maybe you need the note card near the computer, something on your phone that pops up, whatever it is, like that it helps you remember the identity of who it is that you're stepping into. And if you miss a day, it's totally fine. You're not starting over. You're just, okay, well, we're continuing with where we left off, because the person you're becoming doesn't need perfection by any means. They just need reminders. This shift in your momentum of, from trying harder to I'm living more aligned. Like you stop relying on motivation and you start just trusting your choices. You're not forcing habits. You're reinforcing who you actually are. And when like action feels like expressions of your identity, like instead of the pressure-filled tasks, like they stick and they build on top of that. Now that takes us to the third principle, which is the micro stack method. So like you stack it where it already lives in many cases. If you're anything like me or people that I've worked with over time, like you don't have the time to add a ton to your plate. You've already got, school drop-offs or client fires or emails that stack taller than a cup of coffee. And when you hear like, oh, gosh, you want to build momentum, you just start a new habit, your first thought is like, with what time? It happens to me all the time. And that's exactly why this sort of a principle works. This stack it where it already exists, where it already lives. The idea here is super simple. Instead of carving out new time for your personal growth or your goals, like how do we sneak these momentum moves into the places that already exist in your day? And so this is built on like proven behavioral science, tricks out there around habit stacking. Our brains, they love routines, mine especially. It is a routine brain. And when we attach something tiny but meaningful to it, something we're already doing day to day, it slips right into the rhythm of who we are without needing extra motivation or willpower. You're not adding more, you're just upgrading what's already happening. And so the way you want to look at doing this is like, you just look at natural transitions in your day, while the coffee brews, jot down one parenting win from yesterday. On your walk from the car to the office, like maybe record a 60-second, voice note about something that you learned or something that you want to try. Before you open your email, like write down one strength that you want to lean into. If you're home with your kids, maybe while they brush their teeth at night, you take 3 deep breaths and, you say one thing that you're proud of from the day. It's not about doing more. It's just about making, what you're already doing count more, being more authentic, being more intentional, in how you're showing up. And the key here is to keeping it small, and I mean really small. 1 to 2 minutes max, nothing crazy. These aren't like full-blown routines and whatever. Like they're just micro wins that you can even track them throughout the week. Just use a sticky note or a note app or whatever, and you're gonna be amazed at how you start to feel when you see those things start stacking up and start reviewing them regularly. When they do that, like the momentum starts and it quietly stacks behind the scenes so much faster. And it's such a game changer because it removes like 2 of the biggest blockers in progress, which is like this time scarcity and decision fatigue. Like, nope, I'm just gonna go right into it. When your days are already full, you don't need more pressure. You just need small and repeatable actions that you don't need to feel like are a burden, don't waste mental space on to figure out. When those actions are tied to just natural rhythms, that's when they stick and that's when they can build, and that's where momentum really starts to show up. Now, we're a little bit more than halfway through. Would love to know what your thoughts are. Is there anything you've taken away from this or any thoughts? Have you paused the video and gone copy of the GIVER method or whatever? I don't know. We'll see. But leave your comments. Like I said, I'd love to know what you're thinking along the way. Now, all of this now leads us into the 4th thing, which is progress recognition. You need a system for that. What's your progress check? How to see the wins that you're already creating. Now, something that quietly kills momentum is, it's going to kill momentum more than failure ever could, and it's ignoring the progress. So I kind of hinted at it with this last one. If you're tracking it, you now need to like review it, and check what they are and have progress checks. It happens to all of us. You're doing the work, you're showing up, you're being intentional, but your brain, it skips right past the 10 wins, and the zeros that are all there are what you're actually noticing, right? You were patient with your kids all day, but your mind replays the one moment where you snapped. You made 3 solid moves in your business, but all you can think about is the email that you haven't answered. That's not because you're negative. It's just how our brains are wired, is to notice what's missing more than what's moving. And so that's why this progress check comes in. Like, this is about training your attention to actually see what's working, so you don't lose your momentum. You just because the breakthrough, the change, the whatever isn't loud yet. All right, so here's how you're going to make this simple and really doable. Each day, what I want you to do is I want you to jot down 3 things that show some sort of forward movement. You call it so you're creating this, essentially it's an evidence log that you're using for yourself. And then you're going to look for what are the micro improvements, you're doing something just a little better than you did last time, a little faster. I felt a little bit better about how it turned out. And then second, you're going to notice the ease, when something, when I did something and that maybe used to be hard, it felt lighter. And then the third one is to spot capacity. Those moments that, when you handled more than you could have a month ago or whatever. And it's good to think in those bigger terms, because sometimes if you're like, well, is it better than yesterday? That's hard to look at. Or is it better than a week ago? But sometimes still hard. So sometimes it's getting the evidence over a period of time and watching it so you can see how that transitions, over the big term. Once again, it's all about how it builds up over time. Now, you don't have to do anything fancy to track this stuff. It could be a notebook, by your bedside. It could be a note app on your phone. It could be whatever, something you do while you're waiting for coffee to brew or whatever. Just set a reminder daily that says hey, spot your win. And then write out what are those sentences, 1 to 2 sentences of those sort of things. That's it. You don't have to document your whole life. You don't have to do anything crazy. One of the best exercises is just this, journaling for life, where it's I'm going to open an Excel file and I'm going to give myself the length of one cell. I'm going to stretch a cell to be the page, the width of my my screen, my monitor, and then that's all I'm allowed to write to document everything that happened for a day. Well, this even takes that simpler of we're just doing 1 to 2 sentences. Looking at what that could be. It's not about documenting the whole thing. Just shift the lens and capture momentum in real time. And then once a week, you give yourself maybe a little bit more time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes for that moment, momentum recap that you had. And then you look at, by filtering it through a couple of questions, what worked this week? What patterns am I seeing? What small shift could help make this next week feel a little smoother? And maybe you realize that you're more consistent in the morning with morning routines, or you notice certain locations or times give you better follow through. Well, great, that's gold. Just fine tune whatever it is as a part of your rhythm. Now, I think this one's a really important one, because if you train your brain to spot what's working, it's going to you're going to be convincing yourself that you're in motion, that you're showing up the right ways. You just got to find the ways to identify those. You got to stop and check in and have a system in place that'll do that. You want to start realizing wait, I'm actually doing it. I'm in I'm moving. It may not be fast, but I am moving. And that's how the identity starts to shift for you. When you see that, you don't want to stop, because now you are moving and you want to prove to yourself every single day that you can keep going. And then, of course, the 5th principle, which I believe is the final principle, which is all around the idea of the technical way of describing it is a compound, celebrating ritual, and so it's well, let's celebrate the climb, and we want to make progress feel like it matters, even before the full payoff, because something most people completely overlook when they're trying to build momentum is they don't even celebrate. So it's well, we're not even looking for it, number 1, and then when we do, number 2, we're not tracking it. Well, this is all about this third point of well, we don't celebrate those small wins. Our culture loves the big ones, the dramatic before and after photos, the launch announcement, I finally made it. The thing that most people miss is those small little moments in between. They're built on hundreds of tiny, quiet, easily ignored decisions that nobody claps for. If you're not celebrating those, your brain has no reason to keep doing them, especially when that payoff isn't immediate. So that's where this idea comes in of this celebrate the climb. A simple practice that turns your consistent effort into something that actually you feel good about, even before any results show up. It matters so much, because if you only celebrate when the mountain is climbed, you're going to burn out halfway. So you want to start by keeping it super simple. Build the celebration rituals into your day for the little things. Like, it could be something as small as putting a check mark on the calendar that says you did the thing, like sending a quick I showed up today message to some sort of accountability buddy or whatever. It could be a tiny, taking this moment to just say to yourself, hey, you know what? I just did that mattered, and I kept my promise to me. I kept that momentum, that movement going forward. You're not throwing a party. You're just giving your brain this little nod that says, hey, we're doing this. And then once a month, zoom out and look at your momentum, and maybe a bigger process tracking journal, where you can count the number of days that you showed up. Maybe it's 15 out of 30. Maybe it's 5. Either way, it's still evidence. Parents, maybe you've had dozens of conversations with your kids in the month. Entrepreneurs, maybe you've had sent 90 outreach emails. Maybe employees, you've spoken up in 6 meetings, where at the beginning it was gosh, if I could just have more meaningful conversations, if I could just send the 1, 2, 3 outreach emails, that feels like such small drip in the bucket. No, these are, now it's looking bigger because we've done so much more, and we've tracked it and we've celebrated. That's what's going to work to make these change happen. You're honoring the worth that you're creating in the world. And when you celebrate it and make it about who you're becoming, not just about what you're producing, say hey, I'm celebrating being someone who stays consistent, not just I hit my sales target. No, I'm building big trust in self-trust as a part of this. I'm taking away the pressure to be perfect and do things. I'm just building up what there is. I'm aiming for the kind of stuff that fuels me long term. And motivation doesn't just come from results, it comes from the reinforcement of that. And when the wins are invisible, it's easy to lose steam. But when you learn to celebrate them, you create this loop that keeps moving you forward. There's a mindset, but also there's science behind it that says those wins, those things that we notice, we're giving our brain these these signs to start triggering things like dopamine and such, where it's no, we're trying to build up and keep the momentum and feel good and create more fuel to move forward. This is a ritual. It turns everything into fuel. It helps you keep going because not because you have to, but because you've finally seen how far you've come, and it feels good to keep climbing from that point forward. Your momentum, let's be honest, it starts here. It starts here. If there's one thing that you want to take away from all of this, it's building momentum isn't becoming something totally new overnight. It's about becoming more of who you already are underneath the stress and overthinking and the I'm not doing enough noise that's out there, or trying to live up to some perfect image that you see on Instagram of other people. It's about letting your true strengths finally have space. And yeah, I get it. Progress can feel slow. And, you might be showing up, you might be doing the work and wondering if anything really is making a difference. But that's the magic in this mindset. It's not supposed to feel massive right away in any sort of a way. These principles, they're designed to help you just trust the power in the tiny wins that are out there, and how you stack them over time is going to become something that you can actually feel proud of. If you're wondering where to start, don't try to do this all at once. Start by picking something. I recommend that you start by maybe the compound vision thing we talked about, grabbing 10 minutes and drawing a line between simple daily actions and the bigger life we're trying to build towards, identifying the things we're trying to do over time. What's the triggers that I'm looking for that are going to help me know who it is that I'm becoming. Whatever the thing is of all the stuff we talked about today, don't overthink it. Just attach action to something that you're already doing, that micro stack method, so that it fits into your real life, not this future ideal version that you think you want to become. Then each day, notice the little signs that are working, capture the wins, reflect on the progress, celebrate the momentum, celebrate the heck out of them. You don't have to master all the things we talked about, to begin. Just start doing something. But as you start to master them, once you do, you're going to know something wild. Things get easier. You build momentum, and once it starts rolling, it has a way of just carrying you forward. And what felt like effort at first becomes just part of your identity. This is just who I am now, right? So you just take that next step, no matter how small it is. Let that be a signal to yourself that I'm done waiting, doubting, or over planning. I'm doing something. Now, if this hit home for you, let me know in the comments, what are any tiny actions you're planning to do this week? I want to cheer you on. Also don't forget, like the video and subscribe and ring the bell for our notifications. And of course, if you wanted to dive deeper into these sort of things, then that's where I'm going to recommend that you go to Amazon, or go down to the link in the description, go to Amazon, get yourself a copy of The Giver Method by Jake Talbert. Best thing you could do. It's the best $10 you could invest in yourself, and that you can go do it. So the link will be in the description. Like, I wrote this book in moments like this where you're needing the movement forward. So you're going to find tools and stories and strategies that help you to turn strengths into something that changes your life, and of course the lives around you as a part of that. You can also go to thegivermethod.com so we can connect. You can sign up for the newsletter or find any of the free resources. Or if you're like, man, this message, my audience needs to hear it, that's where we can talk about, maybe how we coordinate a way for me to get on that stage podcast or in front of that audience and help deliver more value to them as a part of your overall strategy. So remember this, the world doesn't need you to do everything. They don't. It just needs you to keep showing up for what matters, and consistently and authentically you, with heart. And just by doing that with the next small step that you're going to take, your momentum, it starts right now. Just commit to doing it, and you'll see how much that moves you forward. And I promise you that when you discover gift superpowers, when you deliver value to people, create more impact, more influence, when you do these things, even in the smallest step, the universe will always have a way of paying you back. I promise you that. So invite the universe to pay you back by taking action today. And so with that, I'll just say have a great rest of your day, and we will catch you in our next video. Have a good one.